and WCCSradio.com. Good morning to you. Time for another installment of Martial Law with Marshall Chriswell. This radio program is intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of these differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. A guy, say, like Marshall Chriswell, who is on the line with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
Good to have you with us here today. So, Marshall, Warren Buffett put out his annual list of Warren's information is always amazing, and investment advice from Berkshire Hathaway. Included in his packet this year is a lot of advice having to do with estate planning. And you and I have talked often about estate planning, of what Warren put out, and, of course, with your experience added in. What are some of the things that really stand out about what he said that we really need to pay attention to as people when it comes to planning our estates?
Yeah, you're right. Warren Buffett is an absolutely fascinating American person. Like he is just one of my favorite people to listen to talk, and and to learn about. He's just and with he's 94 years old, still in large part operating a lot of the day-to-day business at investment business at Berkshire Hathaway, this huge multi-billion-dollar company. But he's an extremely down-to-earth person. And every year he writes a letter to all the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway, and I always like to read it because it contains just lots of real good life advice. And this year, he's clearly looking ahead to the end of his life and what's going to happen with this massive fortune that he's acquired and grown. And so he's got, there's a whole list. I made a list of 10 things that he has in this letter that were interesting to me. But, wow. His overall plan is that he is going to, this guy's worth tens of billions of dollars, right? And he is going to distribute all of his wealth charitably through foundations that are set up that are run by each one of his three children. And none of his wealth is going to outlive his children, who are now 71, 69, and 66. So it's a very interesting plan. And he's also given gifts to his children, and that's one of the places that we start with looking at these lessons. He's given gifts to his children over the years. He and his wives, he's outlived 2 wives. And he talks about, kind of how much he's given, and he says something about, leaving. He believes that he should leave enough to his children that they can do anything, but not enough that they can do nothing. And, so that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is. And from our standpoint, of course, we're not giving away billions of dollars to our kids. Or to anybody, for that matter. We're never going to see billions of dollars, but it does give us an idea of, there are gifts that we can make and things that we can leave our kids and put them in a really good position for their lives without burdening them with tremendous tax obligations or other obligations.
Right, and I think one thing you can take away from that is, and it's clear through his letter that he knows his children very, very well. He says one of the reasons that he began making gifts to them earlier during, it was like middle age, whenever he started making substantial gifts to them, to see how they would handle it and see how they would manage it. And so, we know our kids better than anybody, and so whether it's not going to be $1 billion, but whatever the amount of money that you're leaving, how this is going to impact their lives positively or negative, and you want to plan for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we give to our kids in our estate plan is certainly a big consideration for anybody who's designing that. And, of course, you're doing all of this in consultation and with the guidance of the attorney who's going to say, well, this is the best advantage for you and for those who will benefit from your life. So what is another lesson that Warren Buffett teaches us?
He includes a paragraph in this letter. He says, coming from a 94-year-old, of course, he says, Father Time always wins. And he goes on to say he can be fickle and unfair and even cruel, sometimes ending life at birth or soon thereafter, or waiting a century or so before paying a visit. And he says, to date, I've been lucky, but before long, he'll get around to me. Mm-hmm. And this is the understanding and the clear-eyed reality of the fact that we are going to die someday. And that's something that everybody knows that in a general sense, but to understand the specific, of that, and that, someday we're not going to be here anymore, and we've got to have good plans for the future. And sometimes it's difficult to get clients to really, to really narrow down on that and understand someday our family is going to go on without us, and how do we put them in the best position to do that. So I thought that's very telling that he's really very clear-eyed about that.
I used to tease my mother, and because I always took a lot of physical risks, and she would say, "You're going to get hurt, you're going to kill yourself someday," and I would always tell her, "I am immortal, and nobody's proven me wrong yet." But that word "yet" is the big part of that whole thing. All right.
That's right. So, so it's important to understand that. And as we get older, we do. But you really, when you're talking about estate planning, it's very specific. Yes, I will not be here someday.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Another lesson from Warren Buffett.
So he talks about the fact that he's put his children, they each have their own foundations, that his money's going to be divided among these foundations, and they're going to make charitable gifts and yada yada. And then he also says that he has identified suitable successors. Successor trustees have been designated. Each of them is well known to my children and makes sense to all of us, and they are somewhat younger than my children. As I said, his kids are 71, 69, and 66. So he understands the importance of succession plan. He has this thing. Hey, I want all of my money to be given away charitably in a fairly short amount of time after my death. So he's got people there, successors to his children, that he believes are in line with that goal and that are competent and trustworthy. That's something that we can certainly learn a lot from.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly those who own businesses and want that business to continue to function the way that it has, the way that this person has built it up to be, and wants it to be a real family enterprise. There is an awful lot of planning that goes into that, passing that business along to the next generation within your own family in order for it to continue to be a big part of what your family is all about.
Yeah, and most people do want their business owners would like to see the family business continue in the family. Unfortunately, I see a lot of situations where family businesses in the second or third generation fail because because of just poor succession planning, and the family members that took them over maybe weren't the right people, or didn't have the same passion for it, or that weren't as adept as their parents were. So again, it's knowing your family, knowing your business, and knowing, okay, maybe there are key employees there that you've got to have on board to run the business, even though your family's going to continue to own it, or there are all sorts of different planning opportunities there.
Yeah, and a big part of this, of course, is that if you are of another frame of mind, and that is I want to end my business obligations. I want to cash it in, and therefore I will have this nest egg that I can pass along to my children or to whomever. There takes an awful lot of planning with that as well. And again, it has to do with a business succession plan that takes advantage of tax laws and is not bitten into by those taxes. And your attorney is going to be able to help you to do that in order to make the most out of that and pass it along to your children.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then he gives another piece of advice here, very express advice to any readers of the letter. He says, I have one further suggestion for all parents, whether they are of modest or staggering wealth. When your children are mature, have them read your will before you sign it. And I thought that's interesting. I have, clients always have different different points of view on that. Sometimes, parents will bring all their children with them to one of our meetings, and we can do that, and everybody have an open conversation about what's going on. Some people are very secretive. Some people are very private and feel that their children should not know how much they have in their savings account and how they want to distribute these things whenever they're gone. And so people do that differently. But I thought this was from somebody that that clearly has a lot and has a pretty complex plan to distribute things. He's had his children on board every step of the way.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach, too, especially when you consider that the distribution of whatever it is that you've built over the years might not be equal from child to child. To have them read that with you or to hear that read in its final form before you're gone is something that has to be handled pretty delicately. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and he goes on to say that he's taken advice taken suggestions from all of his children about his estate plan, and where appropriate, he's made amendments. And the couple things there, be open. The kids are, if you're leaving money to your family, to your children, they're going to be the ones that are getting it. So, let's maybe think a little bit about how we're going to structure these distributions, whether it's the family home or investments or whatever, and take their opinion into account. That's I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're out of time in this segment, but that's great advice from Warren Buffett and from you as well. So if folks want to get involved in the estate planning process with you, what should they do?
You can always call my office at 724-465-5826. We're here in the old R&P Cole headquarters behind the post office at 655 Church Street in Indiana. Or go online, check us out at www.westernpalawyer.com.
Very good. Marshall, thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday season, too.
Thanks, Todd. You do the same.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.